Está aquí un y domingo. Una cosita ahí que te voy a poner por los pies para hacerte bailar tú de carajo. Pase el coño, tigrazo.
In Miami, Little Havana, ay, Latin Quarter, la Gran Manzana, we're gonna party.
All right, everybody. I had to have some fun for a second because the internet guys were hating on us, man. Welcome. Peace. It is the guy with the bow tie checking in with you live for another edition of Business with Benefits. We had to have some merengue salsa music in because we have Hala Taha with us. How you doing, Hala?
Hey, what's going on? Thanks for having me. I'm so sorry for all the internet problems.
No, it happened.
Showing on my phone here because show must go on.
It's totally fine. I understand it. And I wanted to play some music from your ex-mentor / boss back in the day. So I thought it'd be fun to have Angie Martinez with the intro. But for the people that don't know who you are and what you do, let them know who you are so we can kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the show.
Sure. My name is Hala Taha. I am the host of Young and Profiting Podcast. I also work full-time at Disney Streaming Services and have a podcast marketing agency that I just started. And Young and Profiting Podcast is the #1 how-to podcast on Apple. And, everything's just very exciting right now.
Awesome. And I'll be remiss if I forgot to ask the audience, thank you for bearing with us folks to get the technology right. Thank you, #Team Live, #Team Replay. However you consume the content, please let us know below with your comment fingers. And we already have some people jumping in just to kind of catch up with the audience. We had Rosalind. Hey. She said, yay, represent from Canada. And then we had Judy McCutcheon. She's out there in Trinidad and Tobago representing for us. Hey, Judy, thanks for jumping in, Queen. And Catherine, she's, are we in Mexico or Miami? Oh, Miami, Catherine, 40 minutes outside of Miami. I went to Cuba when you could. Happy Friday. So interesting thing, you have a great podcast out there, Young and Profiting Podcast. I've seen it before I saw your LinkedIn content, actually, which is interesting because podcasting has become like a word this year. So obviously it's not a new thing, but I was listening to your past content. How did you get into podcasting for people that haven't heard the show yet?
Yeah, sure. So I actually started my career in radio. When I was in college, I had an internship at Hot 97. It's the #1 hip hop and R&B station in the world at that time. At least I don't know what it is now. And I would intern there for about 3 years. I actually dropped out of college to intern there and work there every single day. And I ended up being Angie Martinez's assistant and assistant producer. And that really got me interested in radio. I had tons of online radio shows while I was working at the station with some of the up and coming DJs who actually are on the radio now. And, after that, I started a blog site. It was called Strawberry Blunt, the Sorority of Hip Hop. and Girl Strong, and also had online radio shows during that endeavor. And so radio has been like a big part of my life. I was like in my college radio program, and it's just always kind of a passion that I had. And then, I went into corporate and got the itch and wanted to get back on the mic and started Young and Profiting Podcast.
And that's interesting because some people think like everybody has a podcast. It's a fad. But when you think about it now, I mean, why do you think, because we're doing a video podcast here, so I convert the video into a podcast later. But what do you think about when people are kind of in this mindset that everyone has a podcast is not a thing anymore?
I mean, even 2 years ago when I started Young and Profiting Podcast, everybody told me it was saturated. And a lot of my family and friends were like, what are you doing? You already tried this whole online radio thing. It's not going to work. You have a great career. Like, why are you going backwards? And I was like, you know what? I think this is going to work. I think podcasting is the future. And, now I get like 50,000 down.
Oh, hold on, Hala. Your sound got real low. I think the mic got covered up.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
There you go. Yeah. You're good.
Sorry. We get thousands of downloads and we have thousands of subscribers, and we're a #1 how-to podcast on Apple, and on Castbox, I'm a top 10 education podcast. And, I just keep getting these accolades in terms of like making these milestones. And when I first started, everybody told me that it was saturated. So I think that's just kind of a lie. When you think about, there's like 1 million podcasts in the world. There's so many, it's really actually not that saturated. 1 million podcasts isn't that much when you compare it to, all the YouTubers out there. I think there's like 30 million YouTubers. So it's like, it's important to realize that just because there's a lot of podcasts out there doesn't mean that there's not enough space for you. There's a lot of people in the world who can listen to that podcast, and you don't need to have a huge audience to be successful. It's really about your goals. There's lots of niche podcasters that do well and only get like 100 downloads an episode, and they do just fine, and they have a whole business around it. So it's really what you make of it.
Well, I'm going to ask the audience about that real quick. How often do you listen to a podcast? I know my favorite podcast for a long time was the One Thing podcast. I was pretty on heavy rotation with that. When I cut the grass or something or work with the kids, I'd be listening to that. So let us know in the comments how often you listen to podcasts, because Hala's made a business out of this. And for people that are thinking about getting into it, there's a lot of ins and outs to getting into podcasting. So some people think it's an easy path of entry to get to their clientele. But what are your thoughts on using a podcast to grow your social presence or to grow your business?
I mean, I think podcasting is an amazing way to grow your business. A lot of people use it as a lead gen tool, and it can be like, it's not only your listeners who can become your clients, it can become the people you actually interview on your podcast. So that's the case in my instance. So I started a podcast marketing agency, and a lot of the big CEOs and authors out there, they're starting podcasts. Even people who weren't necessarily in this space before, they're starting podcasts. And a lot of those people are people who I have on my show. And so even though when I first started, I had no intention of starting a podcast marketing agency, it just happened really naturally because a lot of these CEOs would hop on a call with me and tell me, what you're doing is so impressive, and your services and the things that you're showing me is like comparable to what Gary Vee does. Like, can you offer this as a service? Because I'd love to have your service. And so that evolution of, turning my podcast into a business really happened naturally for me. And it was actually my guests who turned into my clients and kind of encouraged me to start my agency because they were impressed with my services. And there's plenty of ways to, maximize your business. You could have a business already and then use the podcast as a way to become a thought leader in your industry and generate awareness around your business and do it that way. You can also, have like affiliate partnerships and promote your affiliate program. So there's lots of ways where you can monetize your podcast. It really just depends on like what exactly your goals are. And yeah.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think out of your 83 episodes, out of the 83 episodes you've done, you've only really done like 5 or 6 yourself, where it's just you talking. So I think it's important to hear your side of the story, because people always see you asking the questions, but not so much getting the meat and potatoes of what you do. So for the people that are kind of in the video realm is kind of increasing right now. You mentioned on an episode in the past that you know somebody would make a video, would make the audio out of it, but they wouldn't show the video. So what are your thoughts right now? Live streaming, we're live right now. You go live on LinkedIn just like I do. What are your thoughts on the power of live podcasting versus just the audio? Like, what's the strengths and weaknesses of each, so people can kind of decide where they want to play?
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend anybody who is starting a podcast to integrate video from the start. I think that was one of my biggest mistakes. I interviewed huge guests and I didn't get them on video, and I regret it so much because when you have a podcast, it's only audio, and the only way to share your audio is through visual components on the internet, right? You can't really, there's no social network where you can just upload an MP3 clip other than the podcast players themselves. And so in order for you to promote your podcast effectively, you need to have a visual component. So whether that's an audiogram or a quote card or a video, and video performs the best because in video, you actually have that human component, and humans are attracted to other humans. Like clicks are always going to be higher on a real human picture than they will on a cartoon or a static image or any sort of just like a picture with some sound behind it. And so that's why it's so important to capture that video with your guest, because then you can chop it up into micro content, promote it on the internet, and your video is definitely going to get a lot more engagement than a static picture would. And YouTube is one of the best places to start a podcast right now. There's not that many podcasters that are really doing it right on YouTube. And so for me, that's where I'm kind of trying to enter it and really, thrive and grow my brand on YouTube. And video is obviously a huge component. Like you're never going to make it on the social platforms or on YouTube if you don't have a video component of your podcast, in my opinion, unless you're a celebrity already. But if you're just starting out and you want engagement on your podcast, I really recommend that you also shoot video.
Well, speaking of engagement, I asked the audience about how often they podcast, and Judy said I try to as often as I can. So maybe Judy listens to your show. Rosalind said I used to host a radio show too, and I miss it. Podcasting makes sense. So maybe Rosalind's gonna have a podcast coming out. You might have inspired her to do so.
You should go
and
for
Catherine
it.
Said she has a good message. I think she'll do it actually. And Catherine said I do podcasts a lot. Great way to get your message out. Which kind of leads to an interesting point with this, that you mentioned the video being big in it. So some people don't have a show. They just want to kind of get out there and rant and just do random stuff. And I love that you have a great swatch of guests. I mean, when I look at your guest list, I mean, you have David Allen was the first one I kind of recognized in your client list. But when people say they want to start a podcast, like obviously you had some background working with Angie Martinez, but what kind of led you to reach so high for potential guests?
Yeah.
Because some people get nervous about that. So how and why did you reach so high for your guests?
Well, because I had a good backstory, it wasn't my first forte in broadcasting. And so I had that like notch on my belt.
Yeah.
I also had a very popular website when I was in my early 20s, and I did some impressive stuff there. I had 50 female bloggers under me. We almost had a show on MTV twice. I was hosting parties and concerts and interviewed a lot of celebrities at that time. I interviewed like Chris Brown and Fabulous and a lot of like big rappers and musicians. And so I was able to basically tell these guests when I started Young and Profiting Podcast that I had all these experiences and I shared my story. I just, shot from the stars from the start, wrote like a nice email telling people like, hey, like my name's Hala. I'm starting a podcast. I'd love for you to like take a chance on me. I've done X, Y, and Z in the past. I've been very successful in the past. This is not my first rodeo when it comes to radio or broadcasting. And, I really think that I'm going to make a difference with this show and I'll make it worth your while. And so in the beginning, I always thought that I wanted to have big, like best-selling authors and things like that on my show. I didn't want to just settle for anyone. And I shot for the stars, and I might have put out 30 solicits, and 2 people said yes in the beginning. It was Dory Clark and Dr. Jack Schaefer. Dory Clark is a very big author and a very familiar face when it comes to podcasts. And Dr. Jack Schaefer was the author of my favorite book. And I told him, like, I've read your book 20 times, and I'm obsessed with this book called The Like Switch, and I still am. And he like felt flattered by that, and so like it was obvious that I actually read his book and was a true fan, and they came on the show, and then that like gave me leverage for the next time when I wanted Dave Allen on my show, for example.
Well, so with the people you've been around, you have Daniel Pink on there, or Dale Negracio. You've been around some great people with these interviews. So it's always, I look at this kind of like the Highlander, which is probably before you were born, that TV show, but it was kind of something where they would take power from another person they fought in battle, and they kind of enhance themselves from that. So when I think about the people you've been around, what do you think are like the top two biggest things you learned from these guests you've interviewed in this journey with the podcast?
Oh, that's a tough question. I feel like I've interviewed so many people. In terms of like the biggest lessons and takeaways, I would say with David Allen, you brought him up. So he is the inventor of GTD, getting things done. And I implement and use his system like every day. And prior to interviewing him, I really didn't know much about it. I actually interviewed him twice. And it really gave me the tools. It's all about like having a to-do list, knowing your priorities, organizing your priorities, having a plan of attack, doing a weekly review, and then a yearly review. And so like all those things I've implemented with myself and my team. And that's definitely been like a huge impact on me. In addition to that, just, Robert Greene is another guy that I've had on my show. He wrote The Laws of Human Nature. He had a book with 50 Cent. He's like a huge, huge author. And almost everything that he said was just like life-changing on that episode. It was such a great 2-part episode. And one of the things that he talks about is the law of death denial. And basically it's this law that, the fact that we kind of avoid thinking about death, we pretend like it doesn't exist. We only talk about it when it really happens, and we don't really think about it too much. But if you think about your own death and realize that life is short and life is gonna, not last forever, it could actually motivate you to accomplish and achieve your goals. And for me, that was really impactful for me. And I actually lost my father to coronavirus in May.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's okay. But it was really tough on me, but I actually used that as motivation to help me realize that, like, nobody lives forever. And for me to kind of put my foot on the gas. And I started this marketing agency, like right after that, in his honor, actually. So those are the two biggest lessons, I'd say.
That's a big one. I mean, you're working with Disney, and that's no small feat to work with Disney. I mean, obviously there are challenges with COVID-19 because of the actual theme park, but the digital platform of Disney Plus coming out has been huge for Disney. So for people kind of in that space, because you hear all the time people think like, I'm going to start a podcast. I hear that frequently. The first step for someone that's thinking about that, obviously you've done this several times when you have your own show. What is the first step? Because people even ask me, and I'm not an expert at all, but what do you think is the first step for starting a show to get it going?
To start a podcast, I think firstly, you want to think about your purpose of starting a podcast. So before you think about the name, before you do anything like that, I would come up with like a two sentence description of what your podcast is, sort of like your description that you would put in iTunes. Like, what would you say your podcast is about? So for me, my podcast helps millennials grow financially and professionally by investigating a new topic each week. Like, that's the premise of our show. It's
kind of we're jumping. Your audio is cutting out a little bit.
Broad, and
I'm trying to hang.
And it's
I'm trying to hang with the audio. Your audio is cutting out a teeny bit.
Financially or professionally. When I first started my show, I listed all the different topics that I would potentially talk about. So entrepreneurship, productivity, time management, all the general topics that I wanted to cover, I also outlined. And that's when I started thinking about the...
Uh-oh. Hold on, your audio's cut out. We're trying to work with the internet guys who are hating on us with the internet. New York is not a good place for internet right now. Hold on, Hala. I'm gonna put some comments up real quick because we can't hear you right now. Judy actually asked, I'm just gonna catch up the comments real quick. We'll get the audio fixed. She said, how do you get big? Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I think you're coming
How
back.
about now?
That's a little better. Judy actually said, how do you get big name guests, which you kind of mentioned you just asked for them. And actually, say it again.
Just on. Let me see.
Hold on, folks. That's what we was late. The internet was not working with us, so we're trying to get this figured out. But Judy asked, how do you get big name guests?
Okay, well, I'm not sure if you guys can hear me or not, but I'm going to just keep talking in case
Uh-oh. Okay, she's going to jump back in. The technology is not working with us today, folks. Well, this is actually a good moment for me to put up the Bowtie Nation portion real quick while we get Hala back on. So hang on one second, folks. Is bow ties for life. Okay, Hala, you're back in. We had Alvin Perry as our Bowtie Nation member. I'm not sure if we're related yet. I was trying to ask him if we're related because he's the same last name, but I don't know yet. So Alvin, let me know if we're cousins. All right, Hala, you're back in though. So some comments to catch up with real quick. Rosalind said, yes, death does motivate me. Thanks, Hala, for saying that. So she understands that as well.
Oh my gosh. What's going on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's just cutting in and out, but we can hear you now. And she said, she said, first get a purple wall. Thank you, Rosalind, for the purple wall comment. All right, so Hala, yeah, they're letting us know the guests. Actually, she said try to turn the video off for a second. That's a good idea, Rosalind. Let's see if that helps the audio.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but it keeps jumping in and out. Let's try to turn the camera off to see if that helps the audio quality. Because I want to get I got another question to ask you real quick. I can't turn the camera off for you, but let's see if you can turn it off.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what's going on with my...
This has happened to me before. It's totally fine. It's happened before. Since you're using your phone, oh, there we go. All right, folks, we might have to do a redo of this show because the audio is not coming through clearly. We'll try one more time to get her back in here. I feel like I'm on MSNBC when they're like, we lost our guest and the control room's talking, but there's no control room. It's just me. So I apologize for the issues of audio. We started late because the internet was not connecting, and this has happened before because everybody's online. So every once in a while I have a challenge where the guests cannot get in or they can't stay in a long time. While this is pulling up, though, I'm going to ask a quick question for you guys. What is your favorite podcast? We asked about your favorite author, but let us know your favorite podcast. Rosalind said it's the Wi-Fi. Well, that was the computer. This is the phone now. So no matter what we use, the computer wasn't working, and now the phone's acting crazy. So we think it's just the I don't know what internet she has, but we'll find that out. But let us know your favorite podcast while we get her back on here. So we will figure this out and get a little bit more content out here. Round 3. That's coming through better though. Okay,
I'm scared. How's my audio now?
No, that's good now. That's much better. Definitely, we fixed it. I did a little improv in between.
Okay.
So I want to ask you, Disney, when we talked about the Disney platform you're working with, Disney's gone through a lot of iterations and changes in the last couple of years. So what's it been like being a part of Disney with this new phase they're in?
Yeah. Well, I actually joined Disney for Disney streaming services. So I've only worked for Disney streaming services. And I basically was part of the team that launched it. And it was really exciting getting it off the ground. Actually, stayed up overnights the week before. And like the day of launch, making sure like all the technical issues were resolved and things like that. And it's been awesome. I mean, Disney's a huge, huge company. We don't really, talk to the other business groups. So I can't say like, it's very different from the parks or the other business units. I work for Disney Streaming Services specifically, but it's been awesome. I mean, it's a great company to kind of learn with, grow with. They're super advanced. Everybody who works there is very smart. And in terms of marketing, which is what I do email and mobile marketing. We're definitely like one of the most advanced companies when it comes to that. So it's been great kind of just learning and being a part of that like incredible change that we're undergoing.
That's cool. I mean, I wouldn't have thought Disney for email marketing and mobile marketing, and we're going through an election cycle right now. So we're all getting a ton of email and a ton of text messages right now. So let's dig into that for a second. After this, we had a quick comment. Rosalind said Trump is messing with the internet. So I know you're in New York, so that's probably well received over there. But the email marketing right now, obviously we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube right now. What are your thoughts on the future of email marketing? Because it seems like it's been bogged down because of the election. What are your thoughts on email marketing for growing a business at this present moment? Uh-oh. Did you get that question? We might have to redo this one, Hala, because you're not hearing me now, I think. Oh, Hala, can you hear us okay?
Well, email is actually one of the most, like the highest ROI in terms of marketing.
Ah, okay. There's a mega delay, so I asked that probably 20 seconds ago.
Email.
So keep going.
I did. Can you?
Yeah, you're good. Me?
Now I hear you. No? I heard you.
Okay. All right, how the delay is too severe. What I think we're gonna do, you already got some requests to come back because this is an interesting conversation with the email ROI. I want to revisit it with the gaps are getting more and more severe on the audio.
Got it. Okay. We have a
folks,
really bad delay.
Yeah. Yes, massive delay. We're going to try to redo this, folks. I appreciate you dealing with it. We was trying for about 15 minutes to figure it out, but we couldn't get it going. So I'm going to invite Hala back on here again. We can get the internet guys to not hate us. Thank you. Appreciate it. The show must go on. So we said, let's just do it and see what happens with the phone. We saw what happened now. So we'll do it again next time when the internet's working. But thank you. Catch you next time on Business with Benefits. Please be safe. Early voting has started in several states, and it will start in Georgia, where I am, on Monday. So if you are registered to vote, you should be registered to vote by now. Please go participate.